Right now, on your screen, a cursor could move on its own, click a menu, scroll a page, fill out a form, and you'd be sitting there watching it happen, doing nothing. That's not a virus. That's the whole pitch behind Google's Project Mariner, and it's real. The strange part is that Google isn't hiding this. They demoed it on purpose. So the question I kept coming back to, the one this whole video answers, is simple. If an AI can drive your browser, who's actually in control of the tabs you open every day? So let's back up to what actually happened. Google announced Project Mariner as part of its Gemini work. It's described as a research prototype, an experimental agent that can take actions inside a web browser for you. Not just tell you how to book a flight, it goes and starts doing the steps. Google showed it running inside Chrome, reading a page, and clicking through tasks a person would normally handle by hand. It's built on their Gemini models, and the key word Google keeps using is agent, not chatbot, not assistant that talks, an agent that acts. That difference is the whole story. Now here's where most people get confused, because they've used ChatGPT or Gemini and think, yeah, AI already does stuff. But it doesn't. A normal chatbot reads and writes text. You ask, it answers. It never touches anything. Project Mariner is different because it looks at what's actually on the screen, the buttons, the boxes, the links, and it decides where to click next. That's the leap. It went from telling you what to do to doing it. And once you get that, you start seeing why Google put it inside a browser instead of a chat box. But how does a piece of software even see a web page? Think of it like this. Imagine you hired an assistant who's never seen a computer, but they're smart and they learn fast. You sit them at your screen and say, "Order me groceries." They can't read your mind. So they look, they spot the search bar, they read the labels, they notice the blue button that says "Add to Cart." Then they move the mouse and click, one careful step at a time. Project Mariner works roughly like that. It takes in what's on the page, plans a move, does it, then looks again to see what changed. Look, plan, click, repeat. That loop is the engine. And that loop matters more than it sounds, because the web wasn't built for machines to click through. It was built for human eyes and human hands. Every site looks different. Buttons hide in weird places. Pop-ups jump in. A human shrugs and figures it out. Most software just breaks. What Google's showing is an agent that can adapt to a page it's never seen, the way you would on a site you've never visited. That's genuinely hard, and it's why this stayed a research problem for so long. But adapting is only half of it. The other half is what happens when it gets something wrong. Because let's be clear about the honest catch here. Google has said Mariner is experimental. In its early form, from what Google showed, it worked in a way where you're meant to keep an eye on it, and it slows down or pauses on sensitive steps rather than just barreling through. That's not a limitation they're embarrassed about. It's the safety design. You don't want an agent that confidently buys the wrong thing or agrees to terms you never read. So it asks. It checks. And that friction is a feature right now, even if it makes the demo look slower than sci-fi promised. Okay, so why should you care about any of this today when it's still a prototype? Because of what it changes about your actual browser, the thing you already stare at for hours. Every boring task you do online, comparing options, filling the same form for the 10th time, digging through a site for one buried detail, that's exactly the kind of grunt work an agent like this is built to take over. Your browser stops being a place you work and starts being a place that works for you. If that idea is interesting to you, hit subscribe, Because I break down one of these AI shifts every week in plain English. All right, back to it. Now, the part that quietly worries me. For an agent to click for you, it has to be logged in as you. It's using your session, your saved details, your permissions. So when Mariner reads a page and acts on it, it's essentially wearing your identity while it works. And that's the trade-off nobody puts on the poster. The more useful the agent, the more access it needs. That's not a Google-specific problem. It's true for every browsing agent being built right now. But it's the exact reason Google's keeping this on a tight leash instead of flipping it on for everyone. And it leads to a bigger question about who wins here. So let's talk winners. The obvious one is anyone drowning in repetitive online work. Researchers, shoppers, people juggling admin, folks who spend half their day clicking through the same steps. An agent that handles the tedious middle part is a real gift. Google wins too, because if your browser does the work, you stay inside Google's tools instead of wandering off. And developers building on top of Gemini get a new kind of app to make, one that acts instead of just chats. This is a whole new lane opening up, but every new lane pushes someone else off the road. So who's threatened? Start with the websites themselves. A huge chunk of the internet runs on you seeing pages, seeing ads, clicking around. If an agent skips straight to the one thing you wanted and ignores everything else, that whole model gets shaky. Sites want eyeballs. Agents don't have eyeballs. Then there's the pile of little tools and browser extensions built to automate small tasks. A general agent that just figures it out could swallow a lot of them. And comparison sites, the ones that live off you browsing slowly and clicking their links, they've got a real reason to be nervous here. But there's a catch on the losing side too. The catch is trust, and it runs both directions. You have to trust the agent to act correctly on your behalf, and websites have to decide whether they'll even let agents in. Some sites are already trying to block or detect automated activity. So we could end up in a tug of war, agents getting better at acting human on the web, and sites getting better at spotting when it's not really you. Whoever wins that back and forth shapes what your browser can actually do. Which brings us to the thing I've been holding back, the piece that changes how you should think about all of this. Here's the shift that most coverage skips right past. We spent 30 years designing the web for human clicks. Every button size, every layout, every checkout flow was tuned for a person's eyes and a person's patience. Project Mariner is an early sign that the web might start getting designed for agents instead. Sites that make life easy for AI agents could win the traffic. Sites that fight them could get quietly skipped. And you, the human, drift toward being the one who approves what the agent already did instead of doing it yourself. That's not a distant future. That's the direction this specific prototype is pointing at. And that answers the question I opened with. Who's really in control of your tabs? Right now, still you. Mariner pauses, checks, asks before the important stuff, and that's on purpose. But the whole design points toward a browser where the default flips, where the agent moves first and you nod along after. Whether that feels like freedom or like losing the wheel depends entirely on how much you decide to hand over. And the wild part is, you'll probably hand over more than you plan to, because it's just easier. It always is. So what should you actually watch for? Watch how much control Google gives you when this rolls out wider. Can you see every step? Can you stop at mid-task? Does it ask before anything that matters? Or does it start assuming yes? Those settings tell you whether this is a tool you drive or a tool that drives you. And watch which websites start welcoming agents versus blocking them, because that fight decides what your agent can even reach. This is the stuff that actually matters, way more than any flashy demo. Here's the one takeaway to keep. Project Mariner isn't really about a fancy new chatbot feature. It's the moment browsing started shifting from something you do to something you supervise. That's a bigger change than it looks, and it's happening quietly, feature by feature, permission by permission. The people who understand it early get to set their own rules before the defaults get set for them. And that's the whole point of paying attention now, while it's still a prototype and you still get a say. If this made the whole agent thing finally click for you, do me a favor and subscribe, because I take one of these confusing AI moves every week and break it down like a normal person would. No hype, no homework. Next up, I'm digging into how these agents are being taught to browse without getting tricked by the sites they visit. And trust me, that rabbit hole goes deep. So stick around. I'll see you in that one.